Welcome to Holly's Pandorium, featuring your host, psychic medium Holly Jordan.
Hey everybody, this is Holly. I'm so glad we're back. It's December already. I cannot believe this year has gone by so fast. I don't know about you, Chelsea, but I swear, they say years go by quickly or time goes by quickly, but I swear it's been like a lightning bolt since January for me. How about you?
Yeah. I've heard the phrase that the days are long, but the years are short, and that's kind of how this year has felt too. So yeah,
That's
I
good.
agree.
I like that. So just to introduce everybody a little bit. So I'm in Washington State and Chelsea is very close by in Oregon.
Yeah,
So we're just across, a couple of rivers and some
yeah,
miles here and there from each other.
just
Now,
a few
I've not
bridges.
spoken with Chelsea before, so her stories are all brand new. So I cannot wait um, to hear what kind of stuff you have been doing and where your paranormal stuff has happened. So if you wouldn't mind, Chelsea, maybe give us a glimpse of how you got started as a psychic medium and what that's been like for you.
So, I wish I could say that I just picked up a Mediumship for Dummies book and it resonated with me, and then I just jumped right in. But no, this has been kind of an interesting lifelong pursuit for me.
Yeah.
My earliest memories of being able to connect with spirit was probably like that I can recall as like second, third grade. I'm sure I
Mhm.
had experiences before then that I just don't have any long term memory attached to. But for me, I remember seeing spirits in the classroom and they would talk to me and I would look around at my friends and be like, no, you can't see that person right there. Like, is it just me? And so I knew I was different at a really young age, but I didn't know what it meant, what to do with it, how it worked. I get people all the time where they're like, how do you do this? Like, teach me. And I'm like, how do you breathe? Explain to me how you breathe. And people are like, well, I guess I don't really know how. I just do it. And I'm like, welcome to mediumship, right? But no, I actually, one of my craziest paranormal experiences is kind of figuring out how I became a medium, but we can get to that part later. But no, this is my last month was my 17th year of working with clients. So I've had a few rodeos in my life. I started seeing clients when I was in my early 20s, just kind of practicing, right? I was part of a ghost hunting group and I kind of thought
Mhm.
that's my calling, right? My mom was buying me astrology and psychic books when I was a teenager because she was like, you're weird. There's something to you. And I don't know what the answers are. So here, take this book. And,
Right.
so
Okay.
I jokingly say this, but I kind of call myself a grassroots medium because I really did this kind of by myself. It wasn't until much, much later, like working 4, 5, 6 years into seeing clients where I was like, maybe I should mentor with someone, ask some questions, make sure I'm not totally crazy, just mildly crazy, right?
Right.
So yeah, it was really kind of one of those organic things where I felt like spirit just kind of lined things up, and then these opportunities would happen or experiences would happen that would lead me down another path, and so, yeah, it's been kind of interesting. But yeah, some of my first experiences with the paranormal were really what showed me that I was a medium because Google didn't exist 25 plus years ago. So I couldn't just Google, like, what's with these see-through people, or why do I hear voices but I know I'm not crazy, right? Like,
Right.
so it was just kind of one of those things. So I read all the books and the encyclopedias and everything that I had access to, before the internet really allowed the opportunity for that. And so it's just been kind of a development. I tell people, I'm a developing psychic. I've been doing it 17 years. I'm going to be developing until the day I die. I learn something new. I learn a new sign or symbol, or have a new wild experience with a client that, it's always unique. It's always new, and it's always growing. So, but yeah, it's been a fun path. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I would have to say ditto on all of that. I've been doing this a little bit longer. I'm at 43 years, but
Oh,
I can
geez.
tell you that it's the same. I learn stuff every single year. I am not there's no such thing to me, like they say someone's an experienced musician, but you're never an expert because there's
Mm-mm.
always something else. And I meet new people all the time that, are budding psychics that are showing me things or teaching me things that maybe I didn't experience yet or that I didn't think about yet. And
Yep.
so, I mean, and it's true, when I started, it was go to the library and get a book and look something
Mhm.
up. There was no internet. So I don't know about you, but sometimes I hear things in other languages, and that's real fun.
Yeah, when I get stuff in other languages, I'll usually just say like, here's what I'm hearing, but I don't know how to pronounce it. So, and then they'll go,
Right.
oh, that means da 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 da. So,
Right.
but I do tend to find when I work with a spirit that doesn't speak my language, I'll usually find that they will either play more with my emotions and more of like with my more of my clairvoyance, like the seeing side.
Yes.
They're like, well, we know you can't hear us, understand us, so we're going to kind of shift things and make it a little bit easier for you. So I do find that, but yeah, trying to figure out languages can be interesting sometimes.
Yeah, I have found there's some spirits that understand. They just have to think about what they wanna say to me, and then there's an understanding. But
Hmm.
when they actually try to talk to me, if they're speaking in another language, then we have trouble.
Yep.
So, yeah, but otherwise, everything is extremely sharp and understandable for me, which I appreciate because
Yeah.
I hate sitting there going, "Give me a second, let me look this up. I don't know what this means." Yeah, but yeah, it's fun though, and it's fun to hear what they're saying.
Yeah. I
Definitely.
agree. I agree.
Definitely. So so you were talking about, let's go back a minute. So when you talk about the classroom, so I can distinctly remember when you said that, I had a flash.
Hmm.
There was a guy that used to stand in my 5th grade classroom next to the piano. There was a kid that was definitely a musical savant that I went to school with, and he would play 3 or 4 popular songs in the morning for everybody, and this spirit would show up and just stand next to the piano, and it was an upright, and he would put his elbow on it and just kinda smile at the kid like, "This is
Wow.
cool."
Yeah.
But yeah, and I remember he would stay away from me because I would kinda, "Ooh," when they get too close, it's cold, and
Yeah. Very. Yeah.
so he was kind enough to not get too close to me and chill me out, but he would hang around and not say much, but he definitely was friendly and kind. He wasn't scary at all.
Almost
But
like an observer type thing.
totally, yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's what my experience was too in grade school, exact same
yeah,
thing. Slightly
yeah.
different. Mine was a woman though, and she would stand over like so in our classroom there was like a coat closet open area where you'd hang your lunch boxes and she would always stand in the corner and I was in the very back far corner of the classroom and so I would just stare at her and she'd shown up a couple times and then but I never paid her much mind because I she wouldn't talk, she wouldn't engage, she would just kind of stand there and just kind of watch over the class and and I would kind of just look around and I would check out what the other students were doing and no one else would see this, but I didn't want to ostracize myself. So I wasn't like, no one else, really? So I would just kind of keep to myself. But there was one time where I was looking, like really looking, because it's like I would see her, but I would just be like, no, I need to pay attention as a teacher. And I would maybe
Right.
look over and glance again. And one time I really just stared at her, like to try to just check her out. And I noticed like part of her face looked really burned or scarred, like heavily scarred. And I was like, interesting. And so in my head, I was like, I wonder if she can hear me. And then she said, I can. And I went, oh. And so then I had a conversation with her and I was like, so what are you here for? And she was like, I just like to watch the students. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, and I don't think I knew what else to ask. And then she was like, I died across the street in a fire. And I was like, interesting. And so I was like, well, that, explained the whole Phantom of the Opera thing that she had going on.
Right. Sure.
And so I remember that day after school, I went up to the teacher and I just played stupid. And I was like, I heard there was a rumor of a fire nearby. And she goes, actually, yeah, turn around. And I said, okay. And she goes, so out those windows, she goes, you see, because the school was right across the street from houses
Mhm.
in a residential neighborhood. And there was, these houses were much older. The school was one of the first ones built in this city I live in. And
Okay.
the houses were older, but then there was this one that looked significantly newer. And she goes, that house burned down about 15 years ago and they rebuilt it. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, why do you ask? I was like, no reason. And it just freaked me out. And I
Just
remember I
no.
saw her one more time after that. In my head, I was like, I'm so sorry you died in a fire. And she was like, it's okay. And then I was like, I can't help you. And she was like, I don't need help. And then she just disappeared. And that was the last time I saw her. And so it was just kind of an interesting experience. And, I had other little ones, but that was my most like my first like real profound moment of like I'm different or there's something to this. And that was really what had me start asking, and that was third grade. So that's when I started asking my mom questions about people and, things like that. And so it was an interesting first run in with spirit. So it's kind of
That
interesting that
sounds,
your guy didn't talk though. Mine was just a
yes,
little bit of talking.
right. So I'm excited that your mom seemed very receptive to what you're doing,
Mhm.
because my mom was also, thankfully, and it made a huge difference. But I don't know if you had this experience or not, but my mom always said, "You can ask me anything you want, but don't talk about this outside the house because
Mm.
people won't understand."
Uh, My mom didn't say that because I'd already told her I don't bring this up because I don't want people to think I'm weird. So I
Oh,
think she already knew that I had that train of thought.
right.
And, I'll be quite frank. My grandma, her mom was schizophrenic,
Oh,
delusions, all that. And so I had to tell my mom because I was quite frankly concerned that I was crazy. But none of the well, they're not delusions, but none of the things that I heard were, my grandma's were aggressive, violent,
sure.
delusions of grandeur. Mine were like, help me, or, I want to talk to my granddaughter, or, so mine were all loving, mine were all caring, or maybe wanting help or concern. And so, when I explained that to my mom, I think she was able to wrap her head around it. But that's when she was like, I mean, literally, I was in sixth grade when she bought me my first psychic book, and I still have it to this day. And she was like, here, take this, you need it. And I was like, oh, and I remember I would sit there and I go, Mom, so like, what's clairaudience is where, and she'd be like, I don't even know, just figure it out, read the book. And because I would try to ask her questions, and she's like, honey, I don't know what to tell you. I got nothing. So, but
I
no, I was blessed that she was open to it. My dad's mom, she was very progressive for her age. Like, she had sacred geometry above her bed. I'm like, oh, I thought all old people slept with a metal pyramid above their bed. Nope, just my family. And so I can't help but wonder. I feel like spirit placed me with my parents because they would both be open to this. And I was also blessed that I wasn't raised with any religion. So I'm a heathen through and through, but I didn't come into life or mediumship or my gifts with any kind of guilt or indoctrination that this was bad or this was unhealthy. I was really just able to kind of be free with it. And I thank my mom, both my parents. I thank them constantly for that opportunity because I do feel blessed for that.
That's you're very fortunate,
I
because
know.
that is
Believe me, I know
that is
that's
a
not the
struggle
case.
a lot of people have. Well, and not just that, but getting to have support at all is
Mhm,
a huge leap for people,
mhm.
because a lot of people come into their full harness of their gifts when they hit pre-puberty or puberty.
Yep.
And so having an environment where it's allowed, where you can freely discuss it, is phenomenal. I know a lot of people from the Midwest and sometimes in the South where they really, really struggled, and it
Mhm.
was very alarming. A lot of things would happen around them. They'd see things and hear things and feel things
For sure.
and have nobody to bounce it off of.
Well, or they have maybe this kind of religious dogma that's like, if you experience this, you're crazy or you're evil or you're, and I was very blessed to be free of
Or
any
it's
of those
demonic.
elements.
You've,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh yeah. I have clients that reach out and they're like, you swear if I book with you, this isn't demonic. And I'm like, listen, I only levitate and my head spins on my Friday night evening shows. That's it. It's a one night a week thing, right? Kind of like with Beetlejuice, otherwise people
Right.
trying to get you to go into Kmart and do shows and, autograph signings, all that stuff. Now, so, but
Ah,
yeah, no, I feel very lucky that I was able to really embrace these gifts without any hesitation and without any kind. I mean, there's obviously some hesitations because I'm like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? But
right.
not anything that made me feel guilty or unworthy or that I shouldn't be doing it.
But I
So
think that's just normal self-doubt, because even
for
the
sure.
most experienced people, we still have critical thinking,
Hmm.
and we still want to make sure that this is what we're supposed to say and this is what we're supposed to have. So that's just normal human self-doubt that we do that. We're People are our own worst critics, no matter what you're doing, whether it's work or psychic work, it doesn't matter. It's whatever's going on with you, you tend to criticize yourself the most. So I get that.
Yeah,
I get that.
absolutely.
So can you think of a time when you were doing a reading that you were really surprised by what you got, the information that you got?
So I literally just had one about a month ago. And it was one of those where I had to call all my medium friends and I was like, you will not believe what I just got in this reading. And it's
Okay.
a random one. And so I will, yeah, it's a fun one. So I had a client who I have worked with in the past. She had a nephew that had just recently passed in the last 6 months. And so I was connecting with him and I pulled him through, kind of described the circumstances around the motorcycle accident and how he passed. And she was like, yep, that all adds up. And I said, but I go, everything really sprung from this argument with his, wife at the time. And that's really, and she's being overbearing about wanting his ashes. And she was like, yes, like we didn't want to give him anything. And I go, he's joking and saying that you should have just stuck to the original plan and given her the dog poop in the urn. And she burst out
Oh
laughing
my
and she goes,
goodness.
I can't believe you just said. I said, why? And she goes, my sister was outside raging furious that his wife wanted ashes. And so she was picking up dried dog turds and putting them in the urn. But then at the last minute was like, no, because if she goes to spread them or do something, she's going to figure out it's dog crap. Right. And so she ended up giving her fireplace ashes instead. And so that's probably the most wild one that I've had real recent. I've had tons of wild things happen. I've been doing this for a little while, but that one's my most recent one where I was like, I cannot believe Spirit just told me to give feed dog crap.
That's funny. That is
So,
incredible.
yeah. And, and it was funny because that the mother of the deceased was a big skeptic. And so she took that recording to her and that's what completely flipped her switch. And she was like, I got to have a session. So I just had a session about a month and a half ago with the mother of the departed. But that was one of my most wild things that have come. I mean, I've had other stuff, but just on the spot, that's probably my favorite that I've had that was funny in the last 6 months.
So I had a friend for many, many years that wanted me to do a reading for a family member. And normally I don't do that. I like to do
I don't either.
direct readings for people, but this was someone who was terminally ill and there was a lot around his situation that was complicated. So because they were family to me and close, I went ahead and did it. And all she could bring me was one of his socks.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all he needed. And that was definitely one of the funniest things, to do a reading from. So do you ever do readings from objects? Have you ever done that?
I don't tend to do psychometry very often. I can, and I have, but I don't need it. If I'm going to do it, I usually do it in a capacity of like, I'll do it as like a teaching moment. Like if I'm mentoring with someone or I'm doing a group class about like building psychic skills, then I will absolutely pull in psychometry because I've met some amazing mediums that only work with psychometry.
Right.
And so, but I don't feel like that's everyone's specialty. Like I can do pet communication. I just don't like to. There's no draw to me. I want to work with the people. Just like I know there's amazing mediums where they're like, I don't want to work with the people. I just want to do the animals. And I'm like, you go do Fido, knock yourself out, right? That's your calling. Psychometry, I don't feel pulled to do it, but I can, and I have in the past. But I love watching others do it. It's super fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. And I have to say, for me, there's no one specific way to do every reading. It seems like every reading is a little unique. To me,
Absolutely.
anyway. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I don't have like a lexicon of questions that I ask Spirit where I'm like, hey, how old were you? How'd you die? Where'd you die? I just I tell my clients in my little introductory spiel, I say, I go, your loved ones know what you need. I don't. I'm working for them, right? Like I'm just going to repeat what they say or talk about what they show me and hope that you understand the context or the meaning or what that means. Like I've gotten weird stuff in readings before where I'm like, there's no way this is going to connect. No one, they're not going to understand. Like where I've even told Spirit, I refuse to say that because they're going to think I sound crazy. And I finally had to learn to embrace the crazy. That was a big lesson. Do you mind if I share that story? Because it's such a good one.
Go for it.
Especially for, I think, mentoring people or people who don't trust themselves in mediumship. I had this, I had a group come, and this group of gals, they've been best friends for like 40 years. They all grew up together. And so one of the gals in the group, her father had passed, and they all called him dad. They all loved, revered him. So they all come to have a group reading with dad, right? And at one point in the reading, the dad kept going, talk about the toaster. And I'm like, what? Like an actual like bread. So in my head, I'm showing him like a bread toaster and he's like, yes, talk about the toaster. I'm like, I'm not going to talk about the toaster. And he's like, he wouldn't go past it. Like I was like, I'm trying to move forward to the reading, but he won't. So I finally told him I'm not going to talk about it. And he goes, you have to talk about the toaster. She'll get it. And I'm like, huh. So I asked the client, I'm like, this is going to sound crazy, but what's with the toaster? He wants to talk about the toaster. And she just goes, oh my God. She goes, so when we got married, my husband and I, 20 years ago, my dad bought us this really amazing toaster. And she goes, and about a month ago, it died. And she's like, and I was so bummed. And she's like, so I bought another toaster. And she's like, get it a few days later and it dies within a week. She's like, so then I get another toaster. It dies within a week. And she's like, I just got my third new toaster yesterday in the mail. And she's like, so tell my dad that this one has to work because I miss my toasted bagels in the morning. And I was like, okay, well, he got the message. So hopefully this one works. But that was such a profound learning experience for me just to trust what I'm getting. Because there's times where I'm like, if it doesn't make sense to me, surely it won't make sense to my client. And I had to learn that, no, I don't know everything about my clients. In fact, most of the time I only know their first name, so I don't know anything about them and I shouldn't assume that I do. And I shouldn't assume that spirit's wrong. And so this was many years ago, but that was a big learning lesson for me. So now I just tell clients, I'm like, look if it sounds crazy and it doesn't line up or you can't understand it, that's fine. But I'd rather throw out things and be wrong than withhold something and have it pop up later in the session where they're like, oh yeah, my toaster broke. And I'd be going, dang it, the toaster, So that was a big thing for me is I had to just humbly accept that sometimes things aren't going to land. And that instead of trying to be a perfectionist, I just need to truly just work for spirit and just accept them as my manager. And I just need to go
Exactly. Well,
Mhm.
and I had one lady that the first image I got, she kind of threw a wide net. She didn't have just one passed on person she wanted to talk to. She had a few, but apparently she had been focusing on her particular grandmother, her paternal grandmother.
Mhm.
And I think it was paternal, but I immediately got an image of an older woman making cinnamon toast. I
Okay.
saw her take the toast out of the toaster, butter, cinnamon, sugar, and then handing it to the person that asked for the reading. That was the image I kept getting. And so I said, I'm not sure who this is. And I described her and I said, but she's handing you cinnamon toast. And she burst out in tears. And I went, oh, she goes, it's my grandma. I've been wanting to talk to her. And I was like, the reaction I think sometimes is exactly that. We have no idea what's coming.
Yep.
And
None whatsoever. And,
none.
and I love it because it keeps this work very refreshing and new and unique every time. But
Yes.
yeah, to a degree though, sometimes it's like, oh, I hope this makes sense. I hope you get the toaster reference,
Right. Exactly.
So
Because they can talk about anything, just like
yeah.
we do.
Mhm. Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
Now, I don't know about you, but when I have someone contact me that specifically want mediumship, I have something that I request people do, and I'll ask them, we'll set up a time and date, and
Mhm.
I'll say, do me a favor and focus on the person that you really want to talk to and talk to them like they're in the room, whether it's in your head or audibly outside, it doesn't matter. Either way works. And just tell them, meet me here, be here for me at this time, at this place, because I want to talk to you. And I have found great success with that. Is there anything like that you do when you're going to do a specific type of reading for people?
So I don't tell clients to think of someone because I already assume that they're coming with a very specific person or persons in mind. So I don't necessarily tell them that. But I do when I'm meditating, I will ask spirit, I will say, look, please come through in order of importance so that,
Oh, that's
we
good.
talk to who is the most important, right? And I always tell spirit, like, what your loved one needs. I don't. So I expect it, because I put total trust, after, having my doubts about toasters and things like that. I'm like, okay, I trust, I'm just going to believe now.
Right.
And so that's what I tell spirit is I just say, please step forward and give me any information, whether that's, through validations, through information, through nicknames, through conversation, what have you. But that's really conversation with me in spirit, but I don't tell my clients that. And now I'm curious to see if it would change the results. So I might try that with a few people as like an experiment. But no, I tend to find, for me, I have very consistently found that spirit will come in, for me anyway, they will come in order of importance. So you don't hear from like your random neighbor when you were 5 or your
Right.
mailman growing up, or, you know,
Correct.
random things like that. But I have found, for me personally, that spirit will just automatically show up. Sometimes I'll get people who think they're more important and they will try to nudge other people out of the way. And that's where, you know, I usually ask my client, like, hey, I feel that I've got, you know, a woman who would come in above you in placement. So either a mother or grandmother figure is the female in this role who we're hoping to connect with. And I'll just kind of make sure before I keep going with the messages, because sometimes people are like, oh, they're on my list, but they're not number one, but they would be bossy and try to push their way through to number one. And so that's kind of my sniff test to make sure I'm picking up the right person for my client. Because I tell people, you know, this is your time and this is
Right.
your money. And I want to make sure we're getting to people that you want to talk to, not just who's the easiest for me to connect with, or
Right.
who's like, I want to make sure I'm getting to the meat and potatoes of who you want to connect with.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And I can say that there's been more than a few times that I start a session and there's a crowd.
Oh,
And sometimes there's somebody pushing their head forward going, I want to talk first. Or I,
Mhm. Or the one in the back going, me. I call it, it's
Yes.
kind of like the Chihuahua. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I get those in the back.
Hello.
So
I
yeah,
love
totally
that.
get that. And that's where
I
I'll
love
usually
that.
tell people, I'm like, well, you've got someone really excited in the background. They feel like a male, they're wanting to talk, and they're a little bit younger. They're like, oh, I know exactly who that is, you know. So and then I just let people know, like, we will get to them. And sometimes I have to even let spirit know, I promise we'll get to you. You just got to let mom talk first,
Right.
or, you know, whoever.
Exactly. Exactly. So if you were going to talk to somebody that really wasn't sure about mediums, because
Mhm.
they're, let's be fair, in day-to-day life and every day-to-day life, the idea of talking to someone that's passed on is still a little scary for a lot of people. And they have preconceived, I'm going to say this politically correct. They have preconceived ideas about where that information comes from.
Mhm.
And so I like to, this is for me, I like to tell people, look, um, I'm going to say some things before we get started, before I talk to you, to kind of protect you and protect me, because I feel like if I don't say that, this is just me, I feel like that helps ease people's minds a little bit,
Mhm.
because it's the paranormal, it's adjacent to normal. So people know we die, and there's a lot of big question marks about what's after, and
Mhm.
is there an after, and what does that entail? And so when you say, well, I talk to people that are around that have passed on, well, that throws people way off. You know, what do you mean you talk to dead people? There's nothing after death. Well,
Mhm.
there kind of is. I hate to tell you, but
Yep.
yeah, there is.
Surprise.
Yes. Surprise. Yes.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I will say that I always appreciate a healthy skeptic. I myself am one. I have seen a lot of mediums
Right.
where I'm like, okay, you have maybe a grander sense of your gifts than maybe you're there, but I'm not
Mm.
ever going to tell someone that it's tough, because on one hand, it's like being a restaurateur and you make a damn good hamburger, and the neighbor next door, they make a hamburger too, and it's just not as good. And you're trying to go, mine are better. Or to where you're saying, like, I'm actually good quality. I don't use, you know, crap fillers, or, you know, garbage ingredient, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's tough, because on one hand, I go into all readings as a skeptic, and, you know, even mediums need mediums, right?
Yes.
But I find that a healthy skeptic can be a good thing, especially when it comes to having a reading with them. Because I find those are some of the best readings I have. Because not only have I flipped their whole world upside down, I've made them question their dogmas, their religions, their realities. And it's just kind of funny to watch those circuits kind of just fry a little bit. That sounds terrible to say, but I like doing that for clients, to show them there is more than just what we see, and there's more than what meets the eye. And so that's where I tell people, I say, you know, my job as a medium is not to prove to you that this is real. I'm just here to demonstrate that there's life after life. That's it.
Right.
And that's what I tell people. I don't use the word death. I say life after life, right? Because it's energy. It's just transmuted. It's changed. That's all. We just don't have this little Tupperware container that we keep our soul stored in. That's the only thing that's different, right? So,
Well,
yeah.
yeah. And I appreciate you saying it that way, Chelsea, because that is one of the fun parts is
Mhm.
getting someone that is a full-blown skeptic that just
Mhm.
you can tell, immediately when they're like, I
Mhm.
don't believe anything you're going to say to me. It's all going to be hooey. And then you say something that really lights their trigger and they're like, there's no way she could have known that. She doesn't know me. That's not on social media. You see the wheels turning
Yep.
and you just see and you can feel that they're going, oh my God, what
How
if?
would they know that I knew they
What
were picking
if?
up dog crap and
Right,
putting it in an urn, right?
exactly. And so there's, and there's always the self-doubt. What if she's lying to me? Well, what if it is real? Oh my gosh. But the idea that there is life after life, and I have to tell you a cute story you'll love. So I do seances every week and
Okay.
spirits come and hang out and visit with me and just talk to me. I do the reverse of what seances used to be. Seances
Okay.
used to be traditionally people would come and ask to talk to someone that's passed on. Well, I have spirits that just come and tell me what's on their minds.
Okay.
And so this one spirit came to me and said, I really don't like ghosts and I don't like spirits. I'm living adjacent. I'm still alive. Stop calling me ghost. I'm not dead. I'm
Mhm.
alive. And it
Mhm.
was like, that's fair. Okay. Living
Mhm.
adjacent. And so
Mhm.
that was the terminology that he wanted because
I
he
like
actually had
that.
this
I'm gonna use
he
that one too.
right,
Yeah.
living adjacent. He said
Mhm.
that, we have a life. We communicate with each other. We see things, we do things, we think about things. We're still having experiences. We just don't have a body. So we
Yeah.
don't have to take naps. We don't have to eat. There's a lot of things we don't have to do that you guys do have to do. And we're still very much alive. We still care
Mhm.
about our families. And I think if anything, getting to be a medium, that's the biggest gift we can share with anyone is your family still loves you
Yeah.
and they're
Yep.
still around because that disconnect and that horrible grieving process that people go through is so draining and so exhausting. And just that one little glimmer of light that they are still there, they're not completely gone. That I think is a gift to be able
Yes.
to give people
Yes.
truly.
And I always love it when people can appreciate it for what it is,
Right.
because for me, I've had some pretty profound experiences with me having a reading from different mediums. And I've worked with mediums that, been doing this 20 plus years or, maybe just a handful of years. And, you know, to me, there's always like that one nugget that you take away that was just that profound moment, and everything else is like, oh, those were all bonuses. That all made sense. But there's that one thing, right, where there's no way they could have guessed or known, or,
Right.
so it's always fun. But yeah, to your point, I agree. I don't like saying that it's death. It's a closing of a chapter, and but it's a new book. It's in a new book in a new library, but it's
Right.
not the end.
Well, and what I love, if you look at history back in the late 1800s when they were experimenting with photography, there's all these delightful images in tintype photos of these gentlemen that really wanted to see what happened when people died. And so they kept taking photographs of
Mm-hmm.
people in the death process. And there's these lovely, very old, can't be faked pictures of a mist coming out of
Yes.
people
Mhm.
passing. And I glom onto that in my mind because it's like I knew it. And I love when science meets the paranormal and they join together a little bit because it's kind of gratifying to see something in the physical world that meets the spiritual world or the spirit world, I should say,
Yeah.
because that's great that there's some other things that link up. That's why I love ghost investigations and all that, because do I think they're all true and on the knot? No. Of course, I know some of them are, action packed and scripted and
Sensationalized. Yeah.
right. Yeah, they're sensationalized, the shock and awe factor, la la la. But the stuff that actually comes through that's gets people to go, wow. I
Mhm.
did some investigations a couple of years ago and did some tours with a group, and it was really fun to have people that were skeptics come on these tours and hear voices on a spirit box and feel things. There was a place that had a child ghost that would touch women's hands
Oh, interesting.
and just kind of hang on to it. So you would feel this little bit of cold, but not scary, but you would
Yeah.
feel something kind of hang on to
Mhm.
your hand, not sharp or fierce, just gently touch your hand. And so when they'd come out of this one area and they'd go, something touched me. Well, where? Can you tell us where? And well, it was my hand. Well, there's this little girl ghost that liked to hang on to people and women, and just touch their hands. It's very sweet. It's not yucky. It's just darling.
Yeah.
But I love those experiences. They're great.
Yeah. No, and funny enough, that's how I found out I was a medium, was through an investigation. Like that was, and man, I wish I could get a hold of those tapes. I mean, but they were from, you're talking almost 20 years ago that we made these recordings, but if I could, because it was wild.
So what
But
happened?
so we were investigating a museum that's here locally. And it's interesting because this museum is horrifically haunted, but they don't want to be known for that. So they make you jump through so many hoops and you have to pay thousands to rent the place to investigate. But I've had friends who've been married in this museum because they do events. It's a big event space now. And I have friends who saw people while they were planning their wedding, like getting dressed and stuff. Or people I've had accounts of people being touched, hearing voices, seeing, disembodied, or hearing disembodied voices, seeing phenomena, seeing things move. And so but they don't want to be known for that. And so they don't advertise it. Well, we were lucky that we knew a curator at the time. So we were able to get in at midnight after, and security just kind of hung out outside. And so there was a little girl in this instance, and in the house, we had records from the census that we had knew that a little girl died there, but we didn't know her age because she had traveled from the East Coast. So all we knew was her name was Sarah, but aside from that, we didn't know any other information. And so myself and one other individual, we were in this building and we were the only ones in the building. Other people were in another, because this museum has several different buildings on the property. And so we said, let's just everyone split up into teams so we can, try to do our best to not create any interference or, mess with anyone else's investigation. So me and one other investigator went in this building. We were just sitting there in the little girl's room, and it's still decorated with her old rocking horse and her bed and everything. I mean, it's just amazing because it's all those trigger objects, right?
Right.
And so I feel so blessed that I got this opportunity, because I don't know a lot of people who've been able to investigate this place. Well, anyway, so we're sitting there and we're doing an EVP session, and we're, asking the questions, giving a few seconds for spirit to respond. And as we're sitting there, the investigator I was with, she said, Sarah, do you know how old you were when you died? And we're sitting there being quiet. And then I go, I just heard, I go, did you hear that? And she goes, no. And I go, I just heard 7. And she was like, no, I didn't hear anything. And I was like, okay, well, fine. And so we go outside and, we reconvene, and everyone's, revealing their findings. And so we come to our tape and we're reviewing it, and the questions are going, and nothing. And then we get to my friend, and she said, Sarah, how old were you when you passed? And you hear this soft little girl's voice go, 7. And then you hear me go, did you just hear that? I just heard 7. And everyone's going, whoa. And then they were like, oh my God, you're a medium. And I was like, I'm actually more like a large, but like, okay, I'll take it. Right. And no, they were like, no, like you talk to dead people. And I was like, no, she just didn't hear it. That's all. Maybe I had better hearing that. And they were like, no, you heard a spirit voice. And so that was really my first major encounter where it'd been recorded and proved and validated, because that conversation I had in 3rd grade, I could have been maybe just a child with a wild imagination. This was really the first thing where I was like, this is undeniable evidence that either I'm crazy or I have this weird skill and I don't know what to do with it. And that was, that would have been about 21 years ago.
So how old were you then?
I was 21. That was half a lifetime ago for me.
Okay.
And so I just remember at that point, that was really what put me on my trajectory to start researching this more and finding out what mediums were. And then I joined a spirit circle where we would, people of varying levels of their mediumship would just kind of take turns seeing what came through. And that was really kind of how I developed, was in this spirit circle. And then I had friends who were like, let me bring my cousin to you. Let me bring my coworker to you. And that was really just kind of how I organically grew. I didn't set out to do this. I didn't even know if I was going to do anything with it. I was just like, ooh, I got a parlor trick I can do at parties or something from time to time.
Right.
But yeah, it ended up turning into much more than that. And so it was a pretty cool experience. But yeah, that was my first like validated evidential, beyond a shadow of a doubt of proof. It was pretty wild.
But that's awesome. But I love that your immediate response was, oh, I just heard it and she didn't. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Because it's funny how quickly we'll deny our own gifts and just kind of go, no, anybody. I still believe everybody's got it. I believe with my whole heart, everyone is capable.
It's a spectrum. Is what I tell people. And I was like, there's going to be people kind of like how some people are just more naturally athletic. It's not to say someone who's unathletic can't become athletic. It just might take a little more lifting on their part, right? And same thing with mediums. Like I've met some who, are just starting out, that I've mentored and worked with where, within a year they're seeing clients. And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't feel comfortable seeing clients till I'd been practicing for like 3 solid years. And then I was like, I think I can give a 20-minute reading, and I was just so nervous and, yeah, so it's fun to see, but no, I agree. I think everyone has a gift. We all have the ability to tune in. The one thing that I have found as far as commonality between all mediums who are like legitimate, not crazy, not frauds, not schizophrenic, right, is that all of us can't talk to our own loved ones. We don't have the ability to connect with our departed, at least in my experience. There may be one medium out there that can, and I just haven't met them yet. But that's been my experience. So it's like I can tell when I have my family here because I can feel them, but I can't. But when I try to talk to them, it's like almost like a brick wall is being put up, or it's like static. I can't tune into that dial. I can't get to their frequency.
So let me expand on that for a second. So part of the gift, as I've experienced it in my lifetime, is that we cannot use the gift for our own benefit.
Bingo.
Okay. But I have had communication with a couple people that have passed on in my family. For example, I had a hat that belonged to my grandfather, and it was an older cowboy hat, and it was straw, and it was just disintegrating. I had it in a hope chest that was cedar lined. I had everything to preserve it as much as possible. And over the years, it just collapsed in on itself and started to just crumble. And so very begrudgingly, I finally threw it away one day. And that night, I heard a horse come up next to my house. And here's my grandfather, who I don't ever remember meeting because I would have been under 2 years of age the last time I saw this guy. And he said, that was my hat, right?
Yeah.
And I just laughed. And I said, hi, Grandpa. And he said, I just want to make sure you knew that was my hat. And I said, yeah, I know. Mom told me. And he said, okay. But it was like, he wanted me to, and the feeling was, it's okay. I get it. It's okay that you let it go. Cause it was bugging me. Cause family stuff is important. It's very important. I do have one other grandfather, his father, who I found out 14 years ago, did seances in Chicago in the 1920s and 30s.
Wow. Okay.
So I never met him.
Okay.
And by day, this is really funny, Chelsea, you're going to love this. By day, he was an attorney, but every Thursday night, he did seances for people.
I love it.
Right. And so he has started in the last 7 years showing up periodically during my seances and making comments.
Okay.
And he shows up dressed in a suit with a tie, and he has perfect hair. It's these beautiful waves of silver, and he's rather abrupt.
Yeah.
And very stern, but he'll make comments to me. Like one night I was so tired. I'd had that horrible cold, and it was a full moon, and he stood in front of me and said, absolutely no, not tonight. And I went, what? And he goes, never on a full moon when you're tired. Never.
Interesting.
He goes, don't do it tonight. So it wasn't like we got to chat. He was just warning me that don't do this. And so I love those. I mean, we're like talking microseconds to get to hear from him. And then poof, he's gone. But I love that. And would I
I've
like to just pull
yeah,
my mom over and have a chat with her for an hour? Absolutely, but that's not gonna happen,
I
and I
know.
know that.
Even mediums need mediums. Yeah, I've had a couple warnings from my dad as
Yeah?
well. One time I was leaving a gallery reading. It was a Halloween reading that I went and did for a big group at someone's house,
Mhm.
and it was kind of out in the sticks. And it was so funny because his big thing when we were kids, was always, watch out for deer. Whenever you're driving at night and you're
Oh,
on a
yeah.
country, just deer, watch out for deer. That was always something he just hounded us about. And
Right.
so I get in my car, and this is a really tiny town, kind of adjacent to where I'm at. And it's only about a 20-minute drive, but it's mostly country to get back here until you make it back into the city where I'm at. And so I got in the car and I'd driven not even a block. I'm still within the city limits. And I heard my dad clear as a bell, watch for deer. And I just went, whoa. And as soon as I heard that, I went, oh crap. And then I looked in front of me and there were two deer right there. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even see them. And it was a mama and a baby crossing the road. And I was
Wow.
like, holy crap. And so then after that, I putzed around the whole rest of the way home and drove really slow with my brights on. But yeah, so I've gotten little stuff like that from him. But I've found that I can't have like a regular just, hey dad, what's up? What you doing?
Right?
There's nothing like that. But
Right.
again, I literally just met with one of my favorite psychics last week. Because I hadn't chatted with him in a while and just kind of wanted his input with life situations and things. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, I wish I could just pick up the phone, but I feel to your point, even mediums are supposed to experience loss and grief. We wouldn't be able to empathize fully with our clients if we're like, sucks you can't talk to him because I can. So I found that after my dad's passing, that I became a better medium because I discovered a different level of empathy. Because prior to that,
Yes.
I'd lost grandparents, obviously, and I'd lost friends, but no one that was really like super deeply profound that I was connected to, or where it wasn't very appropriate for them to pass, where you're okay with their
Right.
passing. And so, yeah, it definitely made me a better medium, but also kind of proved my theory because I was like, because I remember when he was sick, I was like, all right, let's see if I can talk to you. And he was like, do your best, honey. And I was like, okay. So, but I get stuff from him all the time. So it's kind of fun to use his examples of how outrageous he is with getting me signs and symbols to be able to relay it to clients and be able to say, look, if we give them the opportunity to communicate, because what you said earlier is almost identical to what I say to clients, where I'll say, look, they don't sleep on the other side and they don't work on the other side. They have a lot of free time. Bug them. Ask them to go to the bar mitzvah with you. Ask them if they're going to be at graduation, or like,
Right.
they're going to be there, but it's up to us to engage and bring them into our life and make them feel more included. It's not to say that they aren't already there, because this is kind of what I
Right.
tell my clients, but I'm like, but when you ask them for signs and symbols, when you ask to communicate directly with them, like, they want to be an active part of your life, no
Yes.
differently than if they were still physically here, but you have to instigate that. Yeah, sometimes they'll throw stuff at you randomly without you asking, but isn't it more fun to feel like we can engage and interact instead of just
Right.
like, oh, I got a penny or I got a feather. Yay.
Yes.
Like, I'd much rather interact?
Yep. I've been finding dimes lately all
Okay.
over in strange places, and I love that. I actually had a neighbor 3, 4 years ago that just moved, and she was telling me that her family actually had a system. So her grandpa would leave her pennies,
Okay.
and her mom, somebody else in her family left her another delineation, and either nickels or dimes. And so she loved it. She said, because every time I find, they would be in a doorway or they would be somewhere unusual. And so that always made her day. And she was telling me how excited she got by that. And I have found dimes by themselves, no other coins. So it's not like they fell out of my pocket
Mm-hmm.
by, by themselves just around the house. So I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to ask you about situations where have you, can you share a time when you went somewhere, let's say, I'm gonna give you a hypothetical situation. So maybe
Okay.
you went somewhere and maybe you weren't thinking about doing mediumship, but you show up and you notice spirits around you, and then the next thing you know, there's a bunch of them trying to talk to you.
I mean,
Has
isn't that everyday life? I'm sorry. That's just me going grocery shopping. That's a Tuesday. So I guess I'm trying to figure out what you're asking. Like, is that something that happens to me all the time, or do
yeah,
I do anything with it? Because it
is
happens
that
pretty much
can you
anytime
describe
I
a
leave the
situation
house.
where that's happened to you?
Ooh, I can describe lots of times where it's happened. Most of the time when it happens, it's usually when I'm zoning out. I get it a lot, like when I go to my massage appointments, because I was in a car accident a year ago. And so I'm still getting physical therapy and massage from it. And so if I get really relaxed, I'll just start getting pelted. And I'm like, y'all, I'm just trying to fix my neck. Can you please come in an hour when your client's here or when your loved one's here? So I get that when I'm really zoned out. The most it happens, and this is where I have to actually put my shield up pretty strong, is so obviously with my story, I told you I figured this gift out at 21, which is also
Right.
conveniently when you can legally drink and go to bars.
Oh,
So I would get drunk at bars and then just look at someone and go, hey, your mom has a message for you. And then I would just
Oh,
start channeling
no.
for it was bad. So I had to learn mediumship ethics 101. I kind of was like, this is probably not the time or place, but I was just getting pelted with information and I didn't know how to shut things down. And especially if I'm super relaxed, like I've had a couple martinis or something. Right. But yeah, no, I've had that happens pretty regularly, much more so earlier in my development. Now I know how to kind of, I tell people it's like taking the radio and I just turn it down to where it's there. I'm still aware that spirits around me. But I don't, I try not to tune in, because if I even turn that volume up enough, then I'm like, ooh, that's juicy. Oh, that person did that. Oh my God. And then it's funny because my partner, you know, like he can tell, like if we're out to dinner, he'll just see me go, because I always look up and to the left when I pick up on something. And he's like, uh-oh, what's around? I'm like, So yeah, it's a frequent thing. It happens pretty much everywhere. I don't prefer, due to kind of ethical, moral reasons, I try not to channel publicly, because some people aren't ready for it right then. It's not appropriate. Maybe spirit's going to bring up something that's maybe an uncomfortable situation, and I'm sitting here airing it out in the Target parking lot. You know, I don't feel like that's my place. So I try not to engage. But I've certainly had times where if I felt like it was appropriate, or or if I was pretty sure it might be wanted. I had an experience once. If you ever go to Vegas, there's an amazing ghost hunting tour group there. It's a guy who, his name's Adam Flowers. He runs a great business. I've done several of the tours that he's offered, and they provide all the ghost hunting tools, all the equipment, and then they feed you to boot. And it's like $150. And I'm like, I could blow that in a slot machine in about, give me 2 minutes, right?
That
I'd much
sounds
rather go on a
fun.
ghost hunt.
Right.
But this particular ghost hunt we went on, it was Ghost Adventures had done an investigation there a few years prior. And once I found out that, I was like, oh, I got to get there. So did the investigation, and the guy who was running it, not the owner of the company, but the fellow running the tour, and him and I are still connected a little bit and keep in touch from time to time. But I remember I was sitting there with another friend of mine who's also a medium. And I said, there's a male. He's connected to him. I was like, it's either a sibling or a brother, because it's at his same level and he took his own life. And I said, but there's something else with it. Like, it's a complicated situation and I'm trying to ignore it. And so I wait till the end of the tour, and I finally go up to him. I'm like, how would you connect with either the sibling, the brother? And I was like, because he's taking ownership for his passing, but he tried to disguise it as an accidental death. And I said, and I smell smoke. And he was like, yeah, his brother had lit his house on fire and then hung himself, hoping that the rope would burn and that he would just look like he died from suffocation from the fire. And I was like, and I go, and he's got a small child that he left behind, and the wife had to move. And so it was, so that was an appropriate place and time. And he was super receptive.
Nice.
And I've been on his radio show in the past, and because he works like in radio in Vegas. And so it was just kind of an interesting. So sometimes I'll take liberties with that, because I know, okay, I'm in a paranormal situation. So clearly these people are at least interested. So I'm not going to get as many weird looks maybe, but for the most part, no, I don't. When I'm in public, I try not to engage with spirit unless it's like, hi, tell them to call me, give them my business card.
No, and that's fair. And I feel the same way. There has to be pretty much a thumping on my head before I'm going to tell anybody anything in public, because I feel like it's a huge invasion of privacy.
Mm-hmm.
I had a situation in a restaurant several years ago, and the guys would not leave me alone. And some woman was on a date, and the spirit guides did not like this guy at all. And they were like, she is in danger. She needs to get away from him. And so I broke my cardinal rule, and I wrote her a note. And I waited until there was a time when I could get it to her away from him.
Okay.
And I was just very careful about, I don't even remember how I worded it, but I was like, forgive me, but I am a psychic and I am getting information that you need to be very cautious with this man. Please be aware. I don't know how I said it, but I was like, you guys got to give me the words. If this is what you want her to know, you got to tell me in a way that will make sense to her that she'll connect with. And I feel like they did, and I had an incident with neighbors years ago. I lived in an apartment and these neighbors were just fighting and fighting and fighting. They were so loud. And I thought, wow, that's sad, And this one night I was meditating or something and they said, here, write this. So I wrote this whole letter out. I typed up a letter on my computer and printed it for them and stuck it under their door. So they didn't know it was me. I did it anonymously.
Right.
But it stopped. There was no more fighting after that.
Oh, interesting.
Because they gave me information about why they were each fighting and what was making each one of them angry.
Interesting.
And it was hurt. It was hurt
Right.
feelings, but it was relayed to me what those hurt feelings were, what the cause was. And once they saw it, they went, it stopped completely.
Wow.
So it is my genuine hope that whatever I got for them was helpful, not that they would have stopped out of embarrassment.
Right. Right.
Oh, they can hear us. Oh my God. You know what I mean? So,
but some people, I mean, it's probably more likely that you're correct in that situation, that maybe it was because something resonated and they were like, ooh, we should stop. So yeah, makes sense.
But most of the time I gotta be asked. I respect the other psychics that are on TV that go up to strangers and say things, but I don't know that I would ever do that.
Yeah, it's not my thing, and it's not because I'm uncomfortable reading in front of other people or publicly. I'm not worried about embarrassing myself, because my shame left in the mid 80s. But but I find that from an ethical standpoint, because I don't want to make anybody upset, and I want people, spirit wants them to receive all of that information and to receive the messages. And if people are instantly going to put up a wall or be guarded, then there's no point, because we're not of service to spirit and we're definitely not of service to that individual. And so to me, I feel like it's a completely moot point. But if I'm on a ghost tour, I'm doing something, then I will. But I mean, it's to where I know I'm in a safe space where it'll probably be received. And spirit's also pretty good about telling me this is going to be okay. You can do it. It's all right. And then I will.
Right. And I think part of for me is that a lot of what comes through is very personal. And I don't want to blurt out something really personal in a public place.
Absolutely.
Somebody's at Target buying something and I just completely land their plane on a really heavy subject. I don't want to do that to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's a timing thing, exactly, because if they're not in the right headspace, all it's going to do is scare them or perhaps insult them, or I don't want to do anything negative like that. I'd rather that it's positively received. So
absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. Because we work for spirit, or at least that's my opinion. And, I want the message to be received for them. Right. And if their loved one isn't, like, I'll have people tell me, convince my sister or convince so-and-so to come see you. And I'm like, that's not my job. Like, people come to me when they're ready and want a reading. And that's how it's always going to be, or at least that's how I run my business. I know there are other people where they might be a little more pushy or, advantageous by saying, okay, yeah, give me their number and let me reach out. That's not my style. So
there's a free will factor involved.
Absolutely, for sure. And I think people too know that if they're coming to a private session, they know it's going to be emotional. They know that or maybe that there's a chance it could be emotional, because I know when I do gallery readings, even then spirit will bring forward sensitive information, but they'll give it to me in context. But I know it's meant for my information, but not to share, to where, like where they'll say this happened and they have resentment towards me because I didn't act appropriately as a parent, but don't talk about it in front of all these, because if I'm doing a gallery reading in front of 100 other people, I may not be comfortable with all of my, laundry or past being aired out, or some people might be. And so that's where, in a gallery reading, I'll tell folks like, there's a reason that your loved one may not have come through. And it's likely because either the 5-minute, 10-minute reading you're going to quickly get is not enough time for them to convey everything they
Right.
need. Maybe it's
Right.
not the appropriate setting for you to
Right.
get a message because it's really heavy, because it's really dark. And
And
so
really involved. Yeah.
exactly. And so, but no, I'll have spirit where they'll say, this is a really taboo thing. Don't share this. And then I'll go, and then, and I'll tell the client or tell the person in front of everyone in the gallery, I'm going to pull you aside later because I have more things to tell you, but I'm not going to air it. And the funny thing is every time that clients went, thank you, because they know that I know. And then when I go up to them after and, they're like, thank you for not saying anything, because that's a big skeleton in my closet that I don't. And I'm like, oh, I know, your mom told me. So
Well,
that's why I
yeah.
kept it quiet.
And good on them for being open to even try when they know something like that is a
Mm-hmm.
possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's real bravery that they want answers, and bless their hearts for wanting to find out things or subtle things.
Yeah, because as they say, you can't hide from a psychic, right? Like stuff can come up, and so it's a thing.
It's
My psychic my regular one that I love to meet with, she called me out the first meeting I had with her, and I don't ever tell a psychic or any reader that I meet with, whether it's aura readings, whatever, I don't ever tell them the work I do because I don't want them to get nervous and go, oh gosh, I gotta overperform or whatever. And so I'll tell them, I won't tell them anything other than my name or whatever they ask of
right.
me. And this one psychic, she was like, after she did her intro spiel, she was, well, I got to start with this. She was like, you can do what I can do. And I was like, oh. And she was like, no, like my guides are being very insistent. Like you can do what I can do. And I was like, okay. And we get about halfway through the session and she's like, my guides won't stop bugging me. She's like, I got to just stop this session right now. And I'm like, oh, I broke her. I broke the medium. Oh, crap. And she goes, my guides are saying you're wasting your life's purpose if you're not doing this work. She was like, you are a healer. You are supposed to be. She was like, you're a medium. Do you know you can talk to dead people? Have you tried to? And I finally went, oh my God, yes. Okay. I'm a medium. I've been doing this 15 years, because this was a few years ago. And she was like, you can't hide from a psychic. And I was like, I just didn't want to make you nervous. That's all. I wasn't trying to be like, deceitful or anything. And so it was just kind of one of those joking, funny scenarios, but it's true. You can't hide from us. Eventually the truth comes out.
Things come out. Yeah,
Mhm.
they do. But I also feel like when I connect with other psychics, it's a delight for me.
Oh yeah.
It's instant connection. There's a click
Mhm.
and it's like, oh, you get me. You go through the same kind of stuff I do. And
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
that and I love that. That's why I love getting to interview other psychics, because I love to hear everybody's stories, because it's different for everybody, but the same in some ways. I
Different,
mean,
but
there's
the
a
same.
lot of resonating normalcy to what happens when people are around us, and it is a gift. It's a bit of a burden, I will say
Mhm.
that.
It's a blessing and a curse, as I tell people.
Yeah,
Yep.
I call it a blurse.
That's a good one. I like that. Yeah. No,
'Cause it's
and
both.
being
It's
able
both.
to see other, or talk to other psychics, I've jokingly compared it to, it's kind of like if you got in a room with 30 other mediums, right? It's like Baskin and Robbins. Like we are all ice cream, but we all have a
Yes.
different flavor. We are all
Yes.
slightly different in either our approach or, what's important to us, our
Right.
ethics or whatever. But you definitely know when you've met someone in that wavelength. Like it's
Absolutely.
you just know when you know. And so
Absolutely.
I'm blessed that I have one of my very best friends. He's been doing this for 15 years. And I love that I have someone that I can feel normal with. Because with everyone else, I'm like, I can be 95% normal with you. But with him, it's like I can be 101%, right? I
That's
can just be that
awesome.
little extra. So yeah, I totally can relate
It's
to
a
what you're
relief.
saying. It
It's a
is.
relief.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it
like
is.
being a foreigner in somewhere
Mhm,
and someone speaks your language and you're like, "Oh, thankfully, yes."
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's awesome. Well,
absolutely.
Chelsea, we have to go. We've been
I
on
can't
here,
believe it's already been an hour.
I know, right? We're gonna have to do this again.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Because there's lots of fun stories we can share, and I love hearing people's stories.
Yeah,
Um, thank you so much for coming on today. So if
it
you
was
would
a pleasure.
please, for our listening audience that we have here, would you mind spelling out how someone can reach you?
Yeah, so my website is mediumchelsea.com and it's spelled medium, MEDIUM. And then my name is spelled CHELSEA and then .com. And then my email address is the opposite. It is chelseamedium@gmail.com.
Okay, great. So people can reach you there.
Yep.
That's awesome. Thanks again for coming on today,
Thank you
Chelsea. I
for having
really
me. It was a
appreciate you.
pleasure.
And as my friend Jay likes to say, if you like this content, please hit the like and share button and please follow. It helps my page get to other people that have similar interests. It really does make a difference. And it's free. It doesn't cost you a dime. I'm not going to ask you for money. Just hit like. That makes a huge difference. And if you want to ask a question, go for it. Chelsea, thank you so much for coming on
Yes.
today. I am so happy to get to spend time with you.
Me
And
too. It was nice to
we'll
meet
talk
you.
again soon. This is great. This is Holly from Holly's Pandorium saying thank you, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here.